had no idea, and they were upset, and they went on Twitter tirades about it. And then the media, who should know better, or at least even if they didn't know instantaneously why she did it, they have journalistic best practices, which means go and research so that you can get some understanding as to why she did it. But that didn't stop them from running disingenuous, bad faith headlines attacking her and then having to go back and correct it long.
Good evening, bienvenidos, and thank you to everyone here today endeavoring towards a better, more just future for our country and our world. In fidelity and gratitude to a mass people's movement working to establish 21st century social, economic, and human rights, including guaranteed health care, higher education, living wages, and labor rights for all people in the United States. A movement striving to recognize and repair the wounds of racial injustice, colonization, misogyny, and homophobia, and to propose and build reimagined systems of immigration and foreign policy that turn away from the violence and xenophobia of our past. A movement that realizes the unsustainable brutality of an economy that rewards explosive inequalities of wealth for the few at the expense of long-term stability for the many, and who organized a historic grassroots campaign to reclaim our democracy. In a time when millions of people in the United States are looking for deep, systemic solutions to our crises of mass evictions, unemployment, and lack of health care, en el espíritu del pueblo and out of a love for all people, I hereby second the nomination of Senator Bernard Sanders of Vermont for President of the United States of America.
Now, what was extremely bad faith was the fact that she was the second, she was a person to second the nomination. So she wasn't the person who entered his name into nomination. Now, for all the intentionally obtuse people, just so y'all can give you an example, I always talk about bad faith actors, right? I want to give you an example of how all these mainstream media outlets, including MSNBC, who I was on Monday night, and maybe I'll get an invitation back, or maybe I don't, whatever, ABC, a lot of different platforms in bad faith put out headlines making it seem like that was a controversial moment. Twofold reason why they would do that. One, rage clicks. They need those clicks, get those ad revenue dollars up. Number two, because they are there to protect the establishment. And anything that they can do to do that, they get a little, a few more brownie points with the power structure, the current power structure. So she wasn't even the person to enter his name into nomination. She seconded the nomination. So everyone, and then even before that began, they set it up, letting everybody know that there were two people who qualified to have their names introduced into the convention for the purposes of nomination. This is a standard practice. And I absolutely know without a shadow of a doubt, there were enough context clues so that even if you didn't realize that, you could have put two and two together. So there's not a single headline that is out there right now that is in good faith that makes this seem like it was any type of controversy. It was either one, rage clicks, because they got that from a lot of, I don't know if they're even well-meaning at this point, but a lot of liberals who are like, oh my God, I can't stand AOC. Oh, I can't believe she did that. The nerve. This is Joe Biden's night. So they capitalize on that. It's a feedback loop of bad faith actions and obtuseness that is quite profitable, as well as profitable in terms of finances, but profitable in terms of protecting the establishment status quo. Now, in terms of what she said, I appreciated what she said. I honestly, if you're watching the video, you saw she looked, dare I say, presidential. She looked presidential with the flags behind her. Her suit was popping, right? I love the color. I love the poise. The only thing I didn't like was that the teleprompter wasn't precisely in line with the camera. I'm being really nitpicky at this point because I've done teleprompter work, and I know when your teleprompter is right in line with your camera and when it's just off to the side. But considering that it was just off to the side, which is completely immaterial to everybody else, so I'm admitting that it's completely immaterial. I'm just saying, for me personally, whoever set up her teleprompter needed to do just a little bit better job so she didn't have to work so hard. I saw her eyes doing her very best to focus on the camera while her words were just, I think, to the left of her. Besides that, she looked presidential, and she is the future of the party, and not her specifically and by herself individually, but there's a new movement that's coming in the Democratic Party on the face of this planet, this entire country. Like, it's not even just about the Democrats. Whether or not it takes place in the Democratic Party remains to be seen. I'm of the opinion that they're ultimately, for people like AOC and the rest of them to maintain their progressive integrity and their integrity in general, is that they're going to find themselves having to fight the Democratic Party, especially if they win, and especially if they get their way with consolidating Republicans into the Democratic Party. Progressives are going to have to leave. But whether they stay in the Democratic Party or leave, the fact of the matter is that they are the future of politics in this country. To what NBC News said about it. This is the bad faith disingenuousness that I was talking about. Not only that, but the fact that bad faith actors like NBC News last night prey on the ignorance of people who fancy themselves to be politically astute. But they weren't politically astute enough to realize that this was standard operating procedures, and this happens at every single convention. And NBC took advantage of that. This is what they said, quote, "In one of the shortest speeches of the DNC, Representative Ocasio-Cortez did not endorse Joe Biden. Quote, I hereby second the nomination of Senator Bernard Sanders of Vermont for President of the United States of America." End quote. And that's what they ran in a headline. Obviously, that generated a lot of anger across the country. That generated a lot of people who were, went on their Twitter tirades. And it just showed a level of ignorance that abounds in this country, not only with conservatives. Right. I think that's one thing that we have to be mindful of. And it's not only I hate to go on this tangent, but ignorance is kind of like a holistic thing, that's not the phrase I really wanted, but I'm going to go with it. Ignorance does not discriminate based on your politics. Granted, there are some, I think the preponderance of ignorance abides and abounds in conservative circles. I mean, the level of ignorance that's required to maintain that political ideology itself is enough to create a black hole. The density of their denseness. Okay, I'm sorry. That was like a smoking dad's joke. But it abounds in the liberal movement as well. Because it's easy to make money off of ignorance. It's easier to make money off of ignorance than it is to educate your audience. But it also abounds. I don't know if it abounds, but it also certainly exists in leftist circles. And maybe I'll talk about that in the Patrons episode. But I digress. Here's what NBC News ended up doing. They ended up having to correct themselves. They put an editor's note out for clarification. This tweet should have included more detail on the nominating process. We have deleted the tweet to prevent its further spread, but it can be seen here for the record. And then, of course, AOC had to address it herself, because the truth of the matter is lies go further, get around the world faster than the truth gets out of bed. And this is what AOC said. So NBC News, how are you going to fix the incredible amount of damage and misinformation that you are now responsible for? Because a 1:15 a.m. tweet to slip under the radar after blowing up a totally false and divisive narrative across networks isn't it. And obviously that tweet itself was a banger with 114,000 likes and 21,000 retweets. But that's the nature of politics. That's the nature of media. That's the nature of America. America. That's how it works. Unfortunately, that's exactly how it works. And people are still angry this morning at AOC for nominating Bernie Sanders when, one, she was the second person. She seconded it. She did not put his name into nomination, which should have sent if people were acting in good faith and actually had some common damn sense, then that would have, the context clues itself would have informed them that this was not anything out of the ordinary, that this was quite in order with the Democratic convention. But people gladly suspend with common sense for the purposes of adopting a narrative that helps fuel their anger, that maintains their anger, because nothing else people want in this country is to continue being angry with each other. And I'm not saying that from the perspective of us, let's all have some kind of kumbaya moment. I'm saying it for the purposes of that anger is destructive. That weaponized ignorance leads to anger. Anger leads to hatred. Hatred, okay, of course, leads to the dark side. But in this case, the dark side is media propaganda that knows how to work you so that they can get clicks off of you, so that they can make money off of you, and so that they can undermine somebody who is a threat to the establishment. It's a twofer. They made money on those clicks, and they also undermined AOC's position as a rising star in this political system. All right, let's keep this moving. Yesterday afternoon, there was some breaking news that the USPS Postmaster General Louis DeJoy said in a statement of his delay causing policy changes. He said, quote, "To avoid even the appearance of any impact on election mail, I am suspending these initiatives until after the election is concluded." So a kind of a minor, a tentative victory here, except for the fact of, are they going to undo the damage that they caused? Because he had already created enough damage. There was already enough damage done to make sure that this election is impacted in a very significant fashion. Now, mind you, he's doing this so that when he goes before Congress to testify, that he could say, well, we undid that. We stopped that. That wasn't the purposes. And then he put the statement out to say, obviously, I did not do any of this with the intention of harming the election, even though everything that he did harmed the upcoming election. It's really easy to stop doing something when the damage is done. Right? It's super easy to say that, I'm not going to do that anymore. But the deed is done. The deed is done. And so the question is are they going to put resources into undoing the damage that they have done? Are they going to open up the the boxes that they closed up, that they locked down? Are they going to return the ones that they removed? Are they going to restart the sorting machines? Are they going to keep going? Are they going to reinstitute overtime? All of the things that they did to undermine this election, are they going to undo them? Because simply stopping now doesn't tell me that they're going to fix what they broke. The level of insidiousness in this country, man, the amount of damage that can be done when you put an apparatchik like that into positions of power, and when you have a president who has no regard whatsoever for norms and institutions, not a single protocol does Donald Trump give a damn about. He doesn't care about it. He doesn't even care about getting caught because he figures he has Attorney General William Barr in his back pocket, which he does. So he doesn't really care about that either. All he cares about is the appearance. How does it make him look? And he doesn't really even care if it makes him look like a criminal so much as it doesn't make him look in a manner that makes him feel bad or make him question his own sense of his own sense of self-worth. In other words, that didn't come out right. Basically, he doesn't care if you think he's a criminal so long as whatever image is on TV, he's comfortable with. So in whatever given part of the day he becomes uncomfortable with the thing, he will back down. We've seen him back down maybe twice, but every other thing that's presented about him in the media, he doesn't care if he looks stupid as long as it's beneficial to his bottom line, to the most important thing to him, which is his ego. So long as his stupidity serves his ego, he's okay with looking stupid. Does that make sense? He doesn't care about looking criminal so long as he has the Attorney General in his back pocket and so long as it keeps moving the ball in the direction that he wants to go, which ultimately, in my opinion, is to simply serve his ego. And so all of this with the Postmaster General, all of this is immaterial because ultimately Donald Trump is only concerned about serving his ego, and the deed is already done. He already has created the conditions in the post office to help benefit himself in this election. And he tweeted out this morning, if you can protest in person, then you can vote in person. Meanwhile, he's already requested his own mail-in ballots. I honestly didn't know if I was going to be able to do this show today. And here's why. The reason is it's because I'm so fed up across the board with everything about this political system. The disingenuousness of our media. You have all of these Harvard and Yale trained journalists who absolutely, even if they didn't go to college at all, should have the common sense enough to actually understand the nomination process before they put out a piece attacking AOC. So on one side, you got bad faith actors in our media, which we've always had, but it's enough to make you sick. And then on the other hand, you have the president of the United States who's doing everything he possibly can to disrupt all of our institutions so that he can maintain power. And then in the backdrop of all that, you got everybody squabbling. Everyone is arguing. Everyone is jumping on each other. The left is jumping on the left. The right is unified. Don't let them fool you. The right in this country is absolutely unified. But then progressives are going up against liberals. Liberals are going up against progressives. And ultimately, we have a system that is so broken that we are on a freight train collision with 250,000 people to die from coronavirus. And it is a direct byproduct of how ignorant our politics have become in this country. The reason we are on this collision course, and it's almost like we can't stop. The media can't stop itself. The politicos can't stop themselves. Nobody can pause and say, hey, my actions are contributing to the demise of not only this country, but hundreds of thousands of people. It is a direct contribution to it because of how our system works, the way our media works, the way our politicians work, the way our institutions work. And all it needed was for somebody to get into the White House who had no regard for any of that. And we see it in the post office. We see it with COVID-19. But we also have to be able to see how our particular politics and our own intentional obtuseness contributes to this system continuously going down a vicious cycle into destruction. So that's kind of why I didn't want to do the show today. But here we are. I want you to listen to this exchange that took place last night on ABC between Rahm Emanuel and Yvette Simpson. I believe that's, Yvette Simpson from Democracy for America. Listen to Yvette first. The first question is coming from the reporter, the host, and the first response is from Yvette Simpson. Listen in.
She barely got a minute of airtime tonight, pledging her support for her fellow progressive candidate, Bernie Sanders. Yvette, do you think that progressives like AOC are going to be able to bury the hatchet and unify the party?
I think we already have. I mean, the reality is a supermajority, almost 100% of progressives support Joe Biden, are going to work and are already working together with the Biden campaign to make sure we deliver victory. I think the big question and what people don't get about progressives is that we're always fighting for a better future. That's why we're progressives. And so as much as we are excited about getting rid of Donald Trump, we know there is more work to do. We're a little disappointed by the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're in the middle of racial unrest, and we can't talk about health care in the way that we know that people need us to talk about health care. We're in the middle of a racial unrest. We can't talk about what we need to do to end the preschool to prison pipeline, to get rid of talk about the crime bill and how we need to make sure that we decarcerate our prisons. These are conversations that we would expect to be able to have in a year like this, but we're not. We're talking about what Donald Trump is or is not, which is a very big disappointment.
Can I just jump in? I apologize. In the end of the day, politically, it's about winning, and Donald Trump is the single greatest issue, and we want to make this a referendum on him.
We disagree about that.
I know we do.
Think that we still want people
on this one.
People want to vote for something, Rahm, and you know that.
I do.
And we already know that Donald Trump is a disaster. We don't need 4 days of that. We need to know what we're going to do to make people whole.
I'm for 4 days of making sure that Donald Trump, they know he's a disaster, and we have the answer to that problem.
Okay, so let's talk about this. I really appreciate Yvette. I don't know Yvette well, but I met her at a virtual party last week, and she's from Democracy for America, and I appreciate what she was saying there. I really seriously appreciate it because that is the conundrum that we're facing right now. We're facing a party who wants to do nothing but talk about Donald Trump. And the thing is, we all know the kind of problem that Donald Trump is. There's no question about it. Everybody within reason, everybody who's operating in good faith, right? That's the starting point. That's the starting condition. Like if you can ignore if you can ignore the threat that Donald Trump poses to civilization itself, then I really don't want to entertain a conversation with you. I don't think you're a bad person. I just think that you're in a space right now that you're not seeing clearly. Because once you've had some, I don't know, maybe you have had some people die from COVID-19, but I think it's reasonable. I think it's beyond reasonable for us to understand that Donald Trump has exacerbated the COVID-19 in a way that makes him a direct threat to our lives. That said, we know this. We know this. The question is what are we going to do about everything else that's wrong in this country? People have to understand there's a lot of trauma that we can absorb as human beings. And the reason I start there is because I don't think not only can we absorb the trauma in a fashion that is, that we're able to overcome the trauma, but we also become desensitized to the trauma. We also become extremely desensitized to the trauma. And I say that in context of them running a campaign solely against Donald Trump. It's because I don't know if you understand, a lot of Americans are already used to the chaos that Donald Trump brought to this country. They've become desensitized to it. And it's a part of their daily programming. Hell, the media got desensitized to it. Everybody kept saying, let's not make this the new normal. Lo and behold, they kept saying it until it became the new normal. So we are, to a certain degree, America is desensitized to the chaos of Donald Trump. Enough, let me say it precisely, enough Americans are desensitized to the trauma of Donald Trump that it is not a guaranteed bet that people are going to come out to vote against him. But what people will do is come out and vote for something that inspires them that will change their own personal material condition. If you tell people who lost their jobs that I have a specific plan to get you back to work, they will come out and vote for you. But if all you do is say, well, Donald Trump is the reason you lost a job, they already know that. They've absorbed that. That has become a part of their functionality. That's their reality. And it's not necessarily enough to get them up to go out or even to request a mail-in ballot, let alone go out into a pandemic and risk their lives. You cannot win a campaign solely on negativity works. Running negative ads works. This is not to say being kind or anything like that. I always try to make sure that you understand that I'm not saying that we should be pacifists or kind or gentle. I'm saying be more Machiavellian and understand that you got to cut them. You got to cut them. But you also have to help people understand what you're going to do for them. And so I appreciate Yvette, because Rahm Emanuel wants to run this campaign where it's like, just talk about Trump, just talk about Trump and nothing else, because they don't really want to talk about anything else because they don't want to make you any promises. That's the other side of this coin. It's not that they don't realize that a better campaign would be a populist campaign that speaks directly to the material conditions of people across this country, the 45 million people who lost their jobs, the 5.4 million people who just lost their health care. It's not the 1/3 of Americans who couldn't pay their rent. It's not that they aren't aware of it. It's that they want to be able to run an entire campaign without making any promises to you whatsoever. And that's why, even though I'm with Yvette, like the majority of progressives understand, like, listen, we're going to help you get rid of Donald Trump. But on the other side of that coin, we are coming for the Democratic Party to rip them to shreds. I cannot wait until these chains are broken off of me and I can say what needs to be said about Democrats. But we got to get rid of Trump.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and get twice the content and unfiltered interviews without any of the commercial interruptions.
And here we go. At this part of every single episode, I'd like to take a minute to thank the people who make the show possible, our patrons. Very special welcome to Sam. Thank you for becoming a patron. Very special welcome to Mika Smith. Thank you for becoming a patron. Chelsea McClellan, thank you so much for becoming a patron. And Reed Stever, thank you for becoming a patron. Now, everybody just bop your head. You too can become a part of this prestigious and prodigious Patreon family by going to patreon.com/the BPD show, where you get access to twice the content, uncut, unfiltered, uninterrupted interviews, none of the commercial interruptions, and you give me the ability to speak truth to power, whether the powerful like it or not. You heard me?
Welcome back to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Here we go. All right, let's get to one of the last conversations I want to have in the public show. It's going to be too long for me to finish in the public show, but if you want full access to it, go to patreon.com/the BPD show. Here we go. Are Americans the most propagandized people on the face of the planet? There's an article that I want to read. I want to pull up on your screen, and it is from 3 Cheers for Socialism in the Commonwealth magazine. And this is what they said. I think it's actually pretty poignant. It said, Americans are, of course, the most thoroughly and passively indoctrinated people on the earth. They know next to nothing as a rule about their own history or the histories of other nations, or the histories of the various social movements that have risen and fallen in the past. And they certainly know little or nothing of the complexities and contradictions comprised within the words like socialism and capitalism. Chiefly, what they have been trained not to know or even suspect is that in many ways they enjoy far fewer freedoms and suffer under a more intrusive centralized state than do the citizens of countries with more vigorous social democratic institutions. This is at once the most comic and most tragic aspect of the excitable alarm the talk of social democracy or democratic socialism can elicit on these shores. And a number of Americans have been persuaded to believe that they are freer in the abstract than, say, Germans or Danes, precisely because they possess far fewer freedoms in the concrete. They are far more vulnerable to medical and financial crises, far more likely to receive inadequate health coverage, far more prone to irreparable insolvency, far more unprotected against predatory creditors, far more subject to income inequality and so forth, while effectively paying more in tax. When one figures in federal, state, local, and sales tax, and then compounds those by all expenditures that is in that country, as almost nowhere else their taxes do not cover. One might think that a people who once rebelled against the mightiest empire on the earth on the principle of no taxation without representation would not meekly accept taxation without adequate government services. But we accept what we have become used to, I suppose. Even so, one has to ask, what state apparatus in the free world could be more powerful and tyrannical than the one that taxes its citizens while providing no substantial civic benefits in return, solely in order to enrich a piratically overinflated military-industrial complex and to ease the tax burdens of the immensely wealthy? Wow. That is one hell of a paragraph. It is from David Bentley Hart, and the article is in Commonwealth. 3 Cheers for Socialism. I'm going to unpack that a whole lot more in the patrons only episode. Be sure to go to patreon.com/the BPD show. And we're going to discuss why I believe, in addition to this article, why Americans are the most propagandized people on the face of the planet. Thank you for being a beautiful audience. I will see you next time.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/the BPD show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.